The prevailing thought was maybe we'd get a decision on Tom Brady and whether or not he will get his limited partnership and ownership. And what Amy and I were just saying was, how would you feel if you're going into a game with an owner as your analyst? How would you approach that?
Yeah, this is a fascinating one. I can tell you from the personal experience I had that was working with John Gruden that some folks still felt uncomfortable. Let's say Jay Gruden, John's brother, was a coordinator on a certain team, and they were a team in Jay's division. Some felt uncomfortable that John would tell Jay things. That was farthest thing from the truth. Believe me, it was so far from the truth. But I don't need to tell Amy this. There are people in the NFL who have the most massive case of paranoia out there. And maybe it's legit. Maybe people who have stolen secrets know they don't want to give people a chance to steal their secrets. And that's why they're so secretive about stuff. It would create a different and a unique dynamic. I don't think that dynamic would exist with the players, because I think the players will love talking to Tom because so many of them idolized him. They want to glean something from the relationship if they don't have one already. What can Tom Brady share and tell me about playing quarterback or about being successful in the NFL? So I think it's multifaceted, but I do see the concern that some owners would have. I see some of the GMs and head coaches raising that level of concern, but I think it just comes down to the respect you have for Tom. And he's a unique guy. He's a guy who's been around for a long time, and I would assume that most of the people in the league, from an information standpoint on a broadcast, would trust him. Now, does the league feel comfortable with having somebody who's got ownership in a team be in the booth? It happens in other leagues, so it's been done before. I would guess that it would be okay. However, because it's the Raiders, as Amy can tell you, you never know.
Well, I'm smiling ear to ear at your reference of paranoia. As I'm sure you may recall, there's a great Raider lore story about a visiting team coming to play the Raiders, and the coach of this visiting team accuses Al Davis of having cameras in the ceiling of the visiting team locker room, or in some location of the visiting team locker room. You're spying on us. You've got cameras in the visiting team locker room. And wherever that person said the cameras were, I think it was in the ceiling area, Al's response was, they weren't there. In other words, he didn't deny having the cameras, and everybody be calm, there were no cameras. But instead of responding, there were no cameras, he simply said, that's not where the cameras were. I'll hearken on my legal background for a minute, Mike, and say, what about disclosure? If you're sitting next to, as Suzy posed the question, you're sitting next to someone in the broadcast booth who owns an interest in the team, should that be disclosed during or before each game to the viewer? I'm here with Tom Brady. Of course, he owns a piece of a team. If he ultimately purchases an interest in the team, and I think there's an if associated with that for other reasons, and if he is broadcasting, what are your views about disclosing that to the viewer in each game he broadcasts? Necessary?
I mean, it can't hurt. I don't think the viewer cares. If they do, they probably know already. But if they hear it, then you're covered. There's the more transparency you can have with the viewers, the less doubt they're going to have about what you say or why you say it. And then, if Tom's talking about the Raiders as critical of them at any point, if he does have a piece of the team at that point, that would ring in a very different tone and may add value to his career as a broadcaster as well. So, it would be fine. I don't think it would hurt anybody to say it for 5 seconds at the start of a broadcast. But then you've got to determine, when is it germane? Hey, Kevin Burkhardt and Tom are doing the Philadelphia-Dallas game, and later on the schedule, Dallas is going to play this team, and they play the Raiders later on, and that is a reason we have to disclose it. What level of that do you have to do, or do you do it at the start of the year and just move on? Well, either way.
And look, I shared a silly story about paranoia, but the fact is paranoia is real. And there are absolutely, positively, unequivocally teams that would say, no, you can't have access to our practice because you work for another team and we don't want you seeing what we're doing. There are those teams in the league.
But there is contract that says that the broadcasters have access to practice.
Yep.
And to coaches and to coordinators. So, what does Andrew Brandt always say? There will be lawyers.
Yep.
That would add to it, because then you'd have conflicting documentation.
Yep.
And that's a good thing that the league does that, because no broadcast, no group reaches the fan base of the NFL like the broadcasters of an NFL game. So the ability to go to practice and talk to the head coach, talk to coordinators, talk to the players is really important in telling the story of the NFL. And you know this, Amy, you might get things where guys are like, I'm not doing it. I don't like this person. I don't have time to do that. But the fact that they have to do it now is important. I think it's important on our side of the table too, that we use it, that we respect it, and we take care of that information properly. Then you get the best information to share with the viewers, and it gets out and disseminated in the right way. If you misuse the information, whether at practice or in a meeting, and that happens once or twice a season, where there's a misunderstanding on something that might be off the record or on the record, then there's a little ruffle feathers to smooth over with you and that team. And that's happened before, and that'll happen going forward. But I think this is a much different story. It's do I want somebody from the opposition, quote, in my building? Would you ever, Amy, with the Raiders, let anybody from the Chiefs or with a tie to the Chiefs in your building? I don't need you to answer that, because it's almost rhetorical. We know that answer is no.
Check out new episodes of What the Football with Suzy Shuster and Amy Trask every Tuesday. Watch us on the Rich Eisen Show YouTube page, or follow and listen wherever you get your podcasts.